In today's episode of Widow Wisdom and Wealth, you are going to meet Dana Frost. She is the owner and the founder of the Forced Joy Project. She's going to share with us her experience with the terminal illness of her husband and how they forced joy into their everyday during that 100 days he had before his passing. Her story is inspirational, and what she's done with the in-person events at the Forced Joy Project deserves a listen. It's only about 20 minutes, so if you're in between dropping off kids or commuting to work, I really encourage you to lean in. This one's lighthearted, this one's kind, and pay attention to the book of stories. I think it might be something that serves our kids, the community around us, and our hearts very well. So give this one a listen. It's now one of my favorites. Thanks. Well, welcome back to another Widow Wisdom and Wealth. I'm so excited for today's guest, Dana Frost. Dana Frost is the founder of the Forced Joy Project. At age of 28, she was faced with her own cancer diagnosis and treatment. 5 years later, at the age of 33, her husband Brad received a terminal cancer diagnosis and passed 100 days later. Dana is open about her journey with grief in a very unapologetic way, which I personally truly appreciate. And today she runs the Force Joy Project, which includes the Joy Scout Club, bringing ladies together and helping them navigate the liminal space of widowhood. She's also the author of a book of stories, which we hope winds up on every widow's nightstand. In this podcast, I'm going to be mostly a listener, just like all of you, tuning in from your cars or in your earbuds with a walk with the dog. And we're going to lean in and listen to Dana's story because it is one that we should all lean into. So, welcome, Dana, and thank you so much for sharing your story and your mission with our listeners.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, happy to have you. I know this one kind of got rescheduled a few times, and it's like, ooh, something I'm so excited to share with our listeners. So, for people that are very new to the first Forced Joy Project, share a little bit of your personal story with our widowhood community, how the Forced Joy Project came to be. The floor is yours, my love.
Yeah, thank you. So as you mentioned, I was widowed. My husband Brad died when I was 33 years old after a very quick cancer diagnosis. It was 100 days. And in the middle of that time, we were having a really difficult, we were both usually pretty positive about things. We thought we were going to be the ones that would, beat the odds and, live to tell our story, especially because I had my own cancer diagnosis. We were like, there's no way this is happening twice within one household, and really thought that there was a reason. But eventually the diagnosis started to really wear on both of us. Brad was getting sicker and sicker, and we were just having a difficult time navigating it and handling it. And I was desperate for something else besides just the horror of what we were going through. And so I told Brad, I was like, we need to figure out a way to find joy, and during the middle of these horrible days. And Brad was such a realist, and he rolled his eyes and he was like, you want us to force joy? And at the time I was so desperate. I wanted anything good. And I said yes. And so it was something that we started doing together during his diagnosis. And it didn't remove any of the pain or the hardship that we went through, but it did give us something to focus on outside of that. And so we've had a lot of inside jokes and a lot of really lovely, beautiful conversations because we were intentional about looking for these tiny little glimmers. And after he died, it was something that I just continued, and it was never something I thought would be a business. It was just a way to honor myself in this journey. It was a way to honor Brad and what we kind of started doing together. And over the years, it organically has grown into a community of people. There's an online community component to it. And then I run retreats as well and write about ways to find joy and live fully after loss.
Love it. Thank you so much for that, like, beautiful, concise scenario of your story and why you are doing what you're doing with the Forced Joy Project. Now, in description of the Joy Scout Club, someone said that it's a bridge between loss and coming back to life. Tell us what that looks like and how that works, or has it morphed into something different along the way?
So it started just as a community for all grievers, and then in the past year, we shifted it to just widows. I found that that's most of who is, identifying with my story anyway. And now it is a place for widows and widowers that can come and figure out, there is this space where, okay, I'm not in the immediate grief of where it's all consuming, but I don't know what life looks like next. And so we do a lot of what we call field assignments every month, where it's another challenge of trying to figure out what life could look like, what we want, what joy looks like. And it's a really beautiful place where we get to lean on each other and support each other as we figure out the next steps. And there's speaker series that come on, and we have regular Joy Still Exists challenges. And so it's just a really beautiful way to connect with people who have had similar experiences, but also want to build a beautiful life. And I think early in grief, you don't always know that that's possible. So it's really incredible to get to bear witness and be a part of this for myself, as well as all these other people that are, navigating that.
Yeah, tell us about your retreats. What do they look like? What can someone expect?
Yeah, they're all a little bit different. So I have one that's called Joy Scout Camp. That's very similar to the club, Joy Scout Club. That's a little bit more retreat. It's more facilitated. We're in a house. It's, campfire conversations, getting out in nature, connecting with ourselves. And then I also run with my co-founder Tiffany. We do Widows in the Wild, and those are mostly international retreats. And we pick a new location. We do a couple a year, and it's basically more adventure based. So it's for people who are looking to travel but don't necessarily want to be in that facilitated, go around and share our stories, but more just looking for adventure along with a group of people who again understand their experience. So there's two different ones. They are just the most fun. It's amazing how much laughter and joy. People are like, oh, these are widow retreats and widow trips. And isn't that so depressing? And don't you just cry all the time? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes we cry, but it's really so full of joy and there's so much laughter. And when you remove the awkwardness of having to share your story with somebody who hasn't had that experience, who hasn't been widowed, it's amazing just how quickly you connect over other things besides just your grief.
Yeah, and I have found too, I mean, I've been in this widow journey for 13, 14 years now, that sometimes when you are with a group of people that have had that shared similar experience, the stigma is gone, right? You
Right,
can make a
exactly.
very, hey, I'm from Philadelphia, we're sarcastic. We can make a very kind of off-centered joke about grief or about widowhood or about doing it on your own as a sole parent, and it's well received. Like no one thinks like, oh, they're awful to make fun of the death, right? You're like, no,
Right.
we're all in this, right? So I love that you provide that safe place. But how many people are usually on these retreats? And are most with kids, without kids, age bracket, just so that our listeners know, like, hey, who does this fit in? Or it could be your grandmom who's pretty cool, and it could be a 23-year-old who did not expect her spouse to die that young.
Yeah, so the ones in Michigan are a little bit smaller. Those are the Joy Scout camp. And those are usually about 10 people total. And then the international ones are anywhere from 8 people to 22 people, depending on where we go and the itinerary. And it's for all ages. Because I was widowed at 33, I feel like most of my community tends to lean towards, the younger side.
Yeah.
But I've now been writing about grief and talking about this for almost 10 years, and it's definitely widened. So, your cool grandma is definitely welcome to come. I think there's so much wisdom from shared experiences, from having people who are newly widowed to people who are 10 years and beyond, and getting to share what that looks like at different phases can provide a lot of hope for people. So, we really do welcome anybody and everybody. Again, the itineraries, some are really active and some are much more sightseeing. And so we just say it's about finding the right itinerary that speaks to you and knowing it's going to be an amazing group of people.
I love that. All right, tell us about the Book of Stories. How'd that come to be? Describe it for us. How do people find it?
Yeah, so Book of Stories is, it's not actually a book I wrote. It's a little bit confusing. So it is a service that I provide because when Brad died, I wanted to capture his stories. And I felt like I had my own memories, but there were all these other people at his memorial service that were talking about their version of Brad. And I was like, I've never heard this. And, at the time, anybody, I'm assuming all listeners or most listeners are widows. And
Yeah.
so you remember what it's like to not be able to retain the thing. So everybody's sharing these wonderful stories, and I was not in a place to remember any of them. And so that was kind of the idea that sparked Book of Stories was how do we get everybody else's stories? And so it has since turned into a business where it's helping create memorial books for people who have lost a loved one, not just widows. And it's been kind of the side project in my business for the last few years. And so it hasn't been marketed a lot. But I'm
Oh, it
hoping to
is
kind of,
now.
it is now.
So
I'm hoping to
people are
vamp this
listening,
up.
love.
Yes,
Get
yes,
ready.
yes. I'm ready. I'm ready. Um, And yeah, it's been over 5 years I've been quietly doing it. And it started just like with a Google spreadsheet and me collecting stories. And now I've worked with the developer, and it's a very simple way of you share a link and get to customize it. And it's all this very easy, user-friendly interface. And then I create a book out of them. So it's an amazing way, especially if you have kids. If you were widowed younger and you have little ones that might necessarily remember their parent, it's an amazing way for them to get to hear different versions of a parent that they lost.
Yeah, I love, love, love that you're doing that. So,
Thank
like,
you.
when my first husband passed, my youngest was 8, and he's now 21. Ooh, and so we actually
Yeah.
remember him saying, like, I don't know daddy's voice. Like, I
Yeah.
forget it. And it was one of those things that we're like, ooh, who has a voicemail from him? Who
Yeah.
has, a video on our phones? Like, back then we still had flip phones. I'm that old,
Yeah.
right? But like, who has a video of him on their phone that we can collect and share so that James can remember what his voice was? And so you're remembering these stories and these moments in time when they're authentically being shared by the community around them. I always remember
Exactly.
too when my first husband passed, his obituary was online. And then the actual funeral home pulled that all together with pictures we had given them, and they made that into a memorial book for the kids. So the
Oh,
kids could always
beautiful.
access that. So I feel like this is kind of in that same genre, correct?
It's very similar to that. And some people have created it. I had somebody that they were on a hockey team, like a professional hockey team, and this was their 50th anniversary of their championship game. So a bunch of men in their 70s, and they wanted to do it to honor somebody they had lost from 50 years before, like shortly after that. And so you can do it at any time, but I do believe it's easier to get stories when people are, right in that like celebration of life memorial service, because that is when people are most open to sharing and talking about the memories of a person.
Yeah, I love it. So yesterday, actually, in my practice, we hosted Plan Your Own Fun Funeral or Put the Fun in the
Oh,
Funeral. And a lot of people were sitting there going through the discussion of like the different types of funerals we can have, right? You mentioned just now celebration of life. Have you have anyone lean into the book of stories while they're still here, right? To share the stories that they want to moving forward.
yeah, I have. I've had quite a few people with the terminal diagnosis that have reached out, and it is such a gift because they get to read them to the person, so they get to hear the impact. And we will work with somebody, so especially with a terminal diagnosis, timelines can shift quicker than we would want. And so there's a digital copy. I will send stories as they come in, so that they can be experienced together. Because I think so much when I read these stories of Brad of how much he would have loved to have heard the impact, because we don't share that enough when we're still alive.
Yeah.
And so, I think that is the most powerful, beautiful way is to share the stories when somebody is still living. I actually created one when I turned 40 because I was testing out of like, what would this look like for non-grief moments to hear about, what everybody thinks. And again, the impact of our life now. And so you can use it for all different kinds of ways. It doesn't just have to be in grief, but clearly that's where my passion is and that's my business and my own experience. But lots of people have ordered it, for other reasons beforehand.
Yeah, that's great to say because you're right. We don't often walk around saying like, "Hey, best friend, tell me how wonderful I am." It's just
Right,
not
right.
what we
But
do.
we
I mean,
should.
yeah, I think we all should. So I'm gonna be sending it to everyone, being like, "Hey, tell me how
Yeah.
wonderful I
Tell
am." They'll be
me.
like, "Why are you doing this to us? Don't do
Yeah.
it."
Well, maybe you should start leading. Just text a person and be like, this is how much you mean. I feel like
Oh,
everybody should just start telling people.
and that's it. It was so nice too because when we did our fun funeral event yesterday, one of the things is writing letters to the people that you love, like afterwards. But like our theory was like, let's write them in notes, and
Mm.
if we're still here a year later, let's still send them. Right? Tell
Oh,
the
I
people
love
how much you
that.
love them, right? Like send that out there. And that was one of our little experiences that we're going to write these letters to 5 people that we love. And it's going to start with, if you're getting this letter, then I'm still alive, right? Because
Yeah,
otherwise it got
yeah.
handed. Right? And this is
Yeah.
how it works. Otherwise, it's in a memorial book and you'll read it later. Like these are these fun
Yeah.
things. But I love
Oh,
that
I
you
love
have that
that.
system available. And I just hope Book of Stories takes off for you and
Thank
it
you. Thank
continues
you.
to bless everybody. Now, one of
Oh, I
my favorite
appreciate that.
quotes from your website is from Bell Hooks. It says, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion." Share an example of like one of your events that might model this and encourage other people to move. A lot of ladies and gentlemen that I hear in widowhood, like after that first year, and this is their new reality. Sometimes year 2 is a little harder. Then they just stay
Mhm.
in isolation. Like, how do we move someone from that isolation of grief into the shared community of widowhood? So like, give us an example of one of your events and maybe one of your
Yeah.
members.
Of course, of course. I mean, first of all, if people feel that way, if you're feeling that way and listening, I felt that way very much of after the first year, I was so used to doing everything alone. I think I kind of settled into like, I don't need help. If I rely on help, they'll die. All of these
Yeah.
stories we tell ourselves. And so I didn't always look for community. And I think there's a lot of people that struggle that don't want to be their identity. And so stepping into a group, stepping into community, it's a little bit of this rebellion from that,
Mhm.
which is understandable. But I think I had somebody that came to a retreat and it's my favorite example because she showed up and on the first day was like, I hate people. I don't know why I'm here. And I appreciated her honesty so much. I was like, I know you're not alone. It takes a lot to take that first step, especially for an in-person event versus an online event. But I think both can be really intimidating. And she has since gone on. She had such an amazing time connecting with people and felt so seen and understood. And again, by people of all walks of life, very different backgrounds that maybe she wouldn't have normally connected with, but has gone on and been on, I think, three other retreats since then and loves to do it and comes back and re-meets with friends again. And I think it's just being open. This doesn't have to be your whole world or identity. I think part of what I'm trying to create is community that holds space for grief, but it's also about life. And so it's having somebody to lean on for all of the moving forward things that we struggle with that we don't necessarily think is grief support. But as widows, as we go through, it's dating again, it's getting new jobs, it's moving from our houses, it's all of these big life decisions and having a community of people that you can bounce ideas off of, I think is just invaluable. And so for anybody who's on the fence, I think try. I think there's so many different types of communities. They might not all be the right one for you, but keep trying. I went to a grief group the first year and it wasn't a good fit. And I was kind of like, oh, no more grief groups. And then I was like, oh, there's all kinds of people running these. And so I do think it's finding what fits for you in your life and kind of what you want moving forward.
Oh, that's great because it's saying that there's different ways to spark that life back in for you.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we're
Exactly.
surrounded with very good intentioned people who, quote unquote, just don't get it. And so by
Exactly.
sitting in a community, it's not saying like, oh, do this. It's this is what worked for me. And if you're not in that shared experience, someone can't say that to you, right? So I love your
Exactly.
example of should we sell the family house or the house that my spouse died in? Like what should we be doing? And to hear how other people navigated it in that same sensitive nature is just a release and fulfilling. What do you think got her, if she's not a people person, to move to that in-person event? I'm just curious.
I think I don't know for her exactly. This was a few years ago, but I think that people eventually you get desperate enough to be understood. I think even if you have the best support system and the most well-intentioned people around you, there is always, I mean, I'll speak for myself. There is so much loneliness and not feeling like my life was understood anymore. And so I think it's probably getting to the point where it's wanting that. And I think you could be skeptical that a group of strangers can give that to you. But I've been hosting in-person retreats for over 8 years now. I have done a lot of them. And unless you go and even the people that go and really stubborn and be like, I don't want to be here, even then they usually find some good in it. And the vast majority of people get so much out of it and come back again and again.
Yeah, and to see that connection, like I'm sure you have a few people that become besties out of that. Like
Oh,
I
of
know
course.
from
I
my,
mean, go ahead.
there you go,
Sorry.
go, go, go.
Oh, I was saying we have a WhatsApp group for each of our groups, and it's even from the first one that you're still active of like somebody just had a baby, all of the big life moments that are happening, and we get to celebrate with each other, and and then the hardships that inevitably keep happening, support each other.
Do you have any nicknames for the members in your groups? Like I'm
Um,
saying, like for the group members, like I'm part of this business coaching called Bold Heart. And when you meet someone else out there in the business world and you're like, wait, they just said something about being woo in their business plan. Like, are you a Boldy? And so we nickname ourselves
uh,
Boldies. And that's how you make that connection weirdly throughout life. You're like, that sounds like a Boldy. Are you one? People are like, what are you talking about? But many they're like, I am.
oh, I
So
love that. We don't, but I feel like we do. We've got to
you
work on
should.
this.
It's
Yeah.
t-shirt, it's hashtag bold, it's
Oh yeah,
everything. Go
yeah.
for it. What are some of the ways that you force some joy into your own life? I'm sure working with all of these women and men that are widows and widowers and seeing them move forward is full of joy. But personally, what's some of the things that you do?
Hmm. It's changed a lot over the years. Again, I'm almost 10 years out, so I don't have to force joy as much as I did in the beginning, which, I think early on it feels like the only joy that you can find is truly forced. Now it's being outside in nature. I moved from the city I lived in with Brad to northern Michigan, so I'm in the dunes and on the lake, and I have a garden that I started last year. So all of these things bring me a lot of joy, and I think it's these quieter moments in life. It's not these, big changes. It's just the everyday moments that bring me a lot of joy.
Oh, I love to hear that. I keep telling my husband, like, it's not about what happens in the day. It's about a cup of coffee and a piece of dark chocolate in a quiet room. I'm trying
Yes.
to
Oh,
just let
that
him know,
sounds
like,
perfect.
joy is quiet. Love you all, but joy's
Yeah.
quiet. We have
Yeah.
6 kids
For
now.
me.
It's a lot.
Oh, and a 170-pound dog. So,
True.
yeah.
Yeah, and then two others and a cat and some of these beetle things they came home with for the summer. I was like, they make
Yeah.
noise. What are they?
Yeah.
So,
No wonder joy is quiet for
yeah, it's
you.
very, very quiet. Oh, Dana, I'm so happy that you're able to share the conversation today with us. Where's the best place for listeners to find out more about your projects and what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. Everything can be linked from forcedjoyproject.com, or you can learn more about Book of Stories at bookofstories.com.
That's awesome. We'll put those links as well as all of your social media links in the show notes for you. And I just want to thank you so much for spending some time and telling our listeners what's out there and what's available. Like you said, like there's not one size fits all. You have to try it out. And I think this is a wonderful way to connect with others that you might not know in the same place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna. Really appreciate it.